Hello and welcome to a reading from the Siddha Principles from the Sacred Discourses of Agastya Valipadu. Today we will continue to talk about who is a perfected Siddha, but we'll also talk about how knowledge is received and shared in the world. So this particular discourse brings much needed relief to those on the Siddha path who do not have the luxury of becoming ascetics in the forest. Because, most of us who are living in the current world, we do not have the ability or the opportunity to go and live in the forest, but we are still desirous of following this path. So many of us remain in society, supporting our families, we work, we pay our bills, and are in constant interaction with the outside world, which is necessary for our day-to-day life. In such an instance, what do? And Sage Agastya, in his discourse addressing Gajaraj-Lopez, talks about this so beautifully. He says, a perfected Siddha is one who is detached from the world. In such circumstances, it is indeed a very difficult situation when a person like you, which is Gajaraj-Lopez, who is still involved in family life, must also live as a Siddha in the world. He acknowledges that it is a difficult thing because for us to live in the world and to begin to understand the path of the Siddha and to live in that way is very hard. So what he says is, that is why one must walk slowly on the path. There should be eagerness, but not haste. Keep the changes that happen within you to yourself. And this is very important. Why is it? Because one of the reasons is the world who is seeing you as a family person, as a person, working and living ordinary life, will not be ready to accept you if you start sharing all the important things that's happening within you. And as you walk on the Siddha path, there are a lot of important things that will begin to happen within you that will show you that your awareness has reached a different level. So he says, keep the changes that happen within you to yourself. As the outside world begins to appreciate you, at one stage, without even knowing it, you will appear as a Siddha. So that will also eventually happen, because in Valipadu Appa says, you are what the world addresses you as. The world addresses you, or the people address you as a Swami, then you're a Swami. If they address you as a Siddha, then you are a Siddha, because you begin to appear as what you are. Now, he says, as you progress, you will view both family and strangers in the same way. So what is one of the most important characteristics of a Siddha is there is no distinction between things. There is no judgment, because everything begins to come from the place of wisdom. And where there is wisdom, there is no differentiation. And Appa's explained this so beautifully. He says, at that stage, you must accept complete vows of renunciation and keep very little relationship with outsiders. So there comes a time when you begin to understand that, there is all these important things happening within me, which are, as part of being a Siddha. At that time, you keep only a pure relationship with your spouse. The relationship between you and your spouse must be that of only service. So at that particular time, you begin to understand that you don't have any physical needs that most people in family life have. And at that time, he says, when you consider everyone as souls, you won't be yourself. At that moment, man or woman, there is no difference. Friends or enemies, there is no difference. Dog or spirit, there is no difference. At that moment, there is neither man nor God, neither ocean nor tears. This is so beautiful, the way he's explained it. So a true Siddha is one who has no distinction. For him, somebody is no longer his own, or somebody is no longer a stranger. Everybody is equal. Whether it is a spirit that he sees or whether he sees a dog, there is no difference. It's all the same. The spirit does not scare him. The dog does not make him want to love it more. It's the same. Even man or God, that distinction he begins to lose the distinction between man or God, because he understands at the level of the Siddha that everything that is in the created world, including gods, come from that one absolute. And we are all the same, because that creation, that absolute principle is within each one of us. And then he says, such a state will surely come. From that moment, without seeking any pleasure from the world, always thinking of God, you must meditate to gain God realization. So the path of the Siddha doesn't mean that when you reach a certain stage and you are a Siddha and it's all done. No, your practice continues. You begin to understand that, as you withdraw from the world, as you begin to lose the distinction between different things, as you no longer have likes or dislikes, then you begin to start contemplating on God realization, understanding what it means to be part of the absolute, yet know that everything that is of the absolute is within yourself. So detaching yourself from this body made of skin and flesh that has worked and rested, make the effort for your soul to reach the feet of the absolute. So even for the Siddha, what is the final goal? It is to reach the feet of the absolute, or become one with the absolute, to merge like the ocean, a little drop merging into the ocean. So then he says, you, which is Gajaraj-Swamigal, had asked to be blessed to do some good work for the people of the world. You have already started this work. In support of this, I too am serving through you, through those who are with you, with great satisfaction. Your work is nearing completion. Once it is done, your soul will stay in the Rishi Loka with me for a while and then gain a higher state automatically. So what does that mean? This means that whenever knowledge needs to come to the world, whether we are talking about the Vedas, the great scriptures, whether we are talking about all the knowledge that is attributed to sage Agastya, remember that all of them have to be brought to the world through human mediums of humans who accept that or receive that knowledge and express it in human terms on human implements like paper or palm leaf manuscripts for others. It is impossible for a god or a rishi to directly talk to people, because we don't have the faculty or the capacity to understand them, because they operate at a higher spiritual level. That is why those like Gajaraj-Swamigal or Brother Pedro Solana of Thailand, of Sri Agastya Temple of Wisdom, they are connected to higher levels and they are able to bring this knowledge to the world. So if you are looking at how the Vedas was brought, how all the great scriptures and knowledge that is attributed to sage Agastya was brought to the world, the examples he is giving through all these living things that we are seeing right now is the Valipadu, Agastya Valipadu, or the Sri Agastya double sword method of martial arts that Guru Brother Pedro Solana is talking about. And I have talked to Pedro Solana, and he says that every move, the way he needs to hold his hands, the way he needs to move his feet, everything just comes, it's downloaded. Agastya gives it to him. He writes it all down, and then he demonstrates it to other people. So that is how, if you remember, that Agastya is actually, said to be the one who has given the oldest forms of martial art, Kalaripayattu and Silambam, to the world. The mistaken notion is Agastya stood in front of people like the modern day masters, martial arts teachers, and he demonstrated and people learned. No, that did not happen like that. Cru Pedro Solana and his double sword method of martial art form is the way Appa is showing how he taught these great martial arts to the world. He came through human mediums. He guided those who were able to receive this message and translate it to human language and show it in the human way so that others in the same wavelength can understand it. So we must understand this thing. And this is something that Agastya says in this chapter, and we'll continue to read and see what he says. Then he says, I must, and he's also talking about Gajaraj-Lopez staying with him at Rishiloka and then gain a higher state automatically. What does that mean? Before, in previous discourses or sessions, we have talked about how there are different levels of awareness, which is what we call the lokas. And people have this mistaken notion that Devaloka is above the Rishiloka. It's not so. Devaloka is below the Rishiloka. Rishiloka comes at the highest level, and after that is Satyaloka, which is the state of entering or merging with the absolute. So here Appa is saying, once Gajaraj-Lopez finishes his stay with him at the Rishiloka, he'll gain a higher state, go to the absolute. So if you want to, you could go back to one of the previous sessions to learn about all the different levels of awareness, which we call the planes of existence or lokas for gods and arhats and the humans, and also the lower levels of the planes. Then Sage Agastya says, I must continue to do my work by working through good people like you. My work will continue. Where is the retirement for me in following the command of God and serving him? Experiencing that great joy that is about to come, I must continue with the work. So Sage Agastya, like many of the Rishis that were first created in this world, and yes, Rishis were first created and after that came the gods. Many of them returned to the absolute after finishing whatever work they needed to do, but many stayed back like Sage Agastya did. And they continue to help the humans, but can they directly help you? No, they work through people. They work through certain people and bring knowledge to the world again and again and again. And I had a question from somebody who said, some of the questions that were asked in Agastya Valipada was already asked by somebody else. And that is so true, because the knowledge has all been given to the world. It's been given in the Vedas, it's been given in the Bible, it's been given in different ways. But how many of us have the access to all this knowledge? We don't. So not everybody knows everything that is already available in the world. So each one who has been chosen by Agastya, whether it is the Nadi reader who's able to have Jnana Nadi, or whether it is a historian who's trying to talk about Agastya, or if for somebody like Gajaraj-Lopez who receives knowledge directly, all of them have their own method of receiving this knowledge through great souls or rishis like Agastya, and understanding it, bring it out or express it in their own way. So that is why you will see differences in how knowledge is expressed. But remember, knowledge is the same. Knowledge that is given is the same. It is received, and the way it is received, understood, and expressed differs. That is why you might see some differences in the way things are being explained, the way the communication is, the language, everything changes from person to person who has been chosen to do this kind of work. So each one of us have the ability to serve people like our rishis like Agastya, if only we are willing to do so. But we also have to have one great qualification, which Appa is talking here. He says, you need to be good. So good is a very underrated term, but it is in goodness, in righteousness, which is actually the evidence of wisdom, as Appa Agastya says. Righteousness is the evidence of wisdom that one understands that a person has become wise, and because they've understood true knowledge, they're expressing it in the way they live, the way they communicate, the way they interact with other people. So goodness shows through them. It is through such good people that great rishis can work because of the kind of energy level or awareness they have. Most of us don't have that ability, but we can help in smaller ways. Then Agastya continues to say, he says, once the disciple reaches a certain stage, they no longer require meditation, and that too is true. Many of us that I have seen and interacted with have reached a stage where they don't have the need to sit down and meditate. Their life itself is a meditation. The way they live is meditation. The way they speak is meditation. It's always a satsang when you talk to such people. Then he says, to those disciples interested in sharing their knowledge with the outside world, Sage Agastya says, and this is to all those who have reached this stage, when woken up in divine contemplation, the sleeping snake will spring up seeing the feet of God. He's talking about Kundalini. When Kundalini, the one, that great power which is latent and sleeping in our Muladhara or the base chakra is woken up, then it springs up seeing the feet of God until that time comes, like the mountain covered by the snow, like the simmering milk covered by cream, like the palm nectar that is brought down from the palm trees before dawn. Spend time like an ordinary man. So this is an advice to everybody who is on the path of the Siddha and have reached a stage where they don't need meditation, where everything is coming up. Wait, don't start expressing it until just by your experience, just by being with you, just by talking to you, people begin to recognize who you are. At that time, that is when you begin to express the knowledge that you have. And now the most important thing of this whole chapter, I'm going to read now. Gods and Munis who are not seen by others, in a situation where they're not able to advise the people of the world directly, choose some as devotees or disciples at various times and correcting their actions, help the world to walk on the righteous path through them. This is the gist of this whole dissertation here. Gods and Munis who are not seen by others, in a situation where they're not able to advise the people of the world directly, choose some as devotees or disciples at various times and correcting their actions, help the world to work on the righteous path to them. This is how it is. This is how Agastya is working through many, many blessed souls at this time. And this is how the great gods and gurus have helped mankind by giving them all the great scriptures and knowledge. And that is why we have great souls all over the world, and they're all valid. Then he continues. While selecting someone like this, we take into consideration the good deeds such a person has performed in his previous life, and giving him the ability to speak, we first ensure that people perceive such a person as a good man. And this is very important. So they select someone based on the good deeds of all the previous lives. And a person cannot become a Siddha or cannot become a medium unless they have purity in them. Because if you think of it, oil and water cannot mix. Think of the energy levels like that. If we are all like oil, we cannot mix with the ocean water because of the fact that our energy levels is more condensed, more thick, more imbued with impurity still. But once we cleanse ourselves, once we become like the ocean water, then they can work through us. So that is why being good, which Agastya keeps talking about over and over again in Valipadu, is so important. That is why for spiritual aspirants, it becomes very important to look at what we are doing, how we talk, what we do, how we interact, how we react. Goodness must flow through us. It's only then will our own energy become at a certain level where they can work through us. And then, while giving these words without pride, without becoming a slave to praise, without desiring money, considering that being asked to do this good task is like performing prayers to God, considering it as a direction given by God, proceed with it. Now, once a person has been chosen, has been changed, and has started receiving all this knowledge, important thing is do not have pride. Know that this knowledge does not come through you. And that's how Gajaraj Swamigal lived. He never talked about himself. He only talked about
I'm not able to hear.
I'm sorry, whoever it is. I believe everybody else is able to hear. So we are almost finishing now. Hold on. So is everybody else able to hear?
Yes, Sakta.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll continue. So while giving these words without pride, without becoming a slave to praise, without desiring money. So when a person is performing God's work like this, do not look for money. Never do that, because it is not your money, it is their money. So that's why when I have written all this, translated all these books, I have not touched the money that comes from the royalty. It's all his money. It remains in the bank. When it needs to be used, how it needs to be used will be his idea, his thought. Like that, Gajaraj Swamigal never asked any money. Nobody asked for dakshina, guru dakshina, nothing. You just do it free of charge, because it's not your work, it's their work. You're only an instrument. And don't have pride that you're doing something great like this. Do it with humility. And that is the kind of person that gods always choose. But many of us, because Maya is so strong, some of us do change, and then that grace goes away. So remember this, and be open to God, and tell them, God and Guru, that you are there as an instrument to share all this information, to be an instrument. And that is very much needed in the current world. And let us all serve Appa, Agastya, or great gurus like him and others with humility, with total idea of service and service alone. And with this, we will stop today, and we will continue next week.